Welcome to the Microcast, a short-form podcast from Microcosm Coaching, where we break down the science, strategy, and psychology behind smarter endurance training. Each week, we tackle a key concept in running, training, or recovery, and we give you practical tools you can apply right away, whether you're building back, leveling up, or chasing down a big goal. We keep it short, evidence-based, and grounded in real coaching experience. No hype, no fluff, just actionable insights to help you train sustainably and perform at your best. Let's get into it.
Greetings.
Welcome back.
Happy New Year. It's New Year's Eve. It's almost the future.
It's not quite New Year's Eve.
This will be coming out on New Year's Eve.
It's coming out on New Year's Eve?
Coming out tomorrow.
Excellent.
So today, it's out now.
You know, people will be listening to this. The moment it comes out, they're fired up.
We literally do have hundreds of people listen the day it comes out.
Thank you, guys. Wow.
People are chomping at the bit.
You surprised me. But I know you're committed to your goals for 2026. So actions tell us everything about
exactly
what you want to achieve.
Waiting for that next micro drop. I'm excited. We're racing this weekend.
I know. And I think I'm having taper tantrums this week.
I think you are too.
I feel terrible. My runs have
awesome.
Felt awful. I've been tired.
Great.
Cranky.
2025 closing out strong for Coach TJ.
Well, we could be starting the year strong. Well, Saturday, I'll let you know.
Yeah. We're running a trail marathon this weekend, which is fun because we haven't raced since Run Rabbit.
Yes.
And it was a pretty big race season for both of us, but, race season is winding down. I think you and I both had, like all race seasons, there were some wins and then there were some growth. There were good days and growth days, right? The only two kinds of days there are.
And if you're me, you had a lot of growth days this year.
You did a lot of growing this summer.
Of growing at 39 years old.
Yeah. But, I think for a lot of folks, their race season is winding down. Maybe they crushed their goals. Maybe some things didn't go as planned. If you're like most of us, it's probably somewhere in between. But I think what most runners get wrong about the off season is they either keep hammering on their way to burnout, or they disappear completely and spend January having to rebuild from scratch after committing to CrossFit only or Jeopardy only during their December. But today we're going to talk about what a better way is. It's not about doing more training. It's about doing smarter training so that when spring hits, when race season hits, you're not playing catch up, but you're actually launching from a higher baseline.
Yeah. So the big focus today, off-season strategy, consistency frameworks, and practical accountability systems. I think it's how do we set ourselves up to get the most out of this off-season so we're not scrambling and panic training in 2026 when we're 8 weeks away from the race we really care about. Exactly. So we're going to do some hot or nots about different off-season training approaches, and we're going to tackle 5 myths about, we like to call it transition season because like the word off-season is low-key triggering for me. Because who's taking it off?
We don't take it off.
Not me.
Not me.
Not anyone who cares about getting good at something.
But also being like, no days off is also crazy.
That's bad as well.
Also bad. Hot takes.
Find the balance.
Find the balance, AKA transition season. So,
all right, hot or not. I need to warm up here because I haven't done enough deep dive calls with my athletes today. So my brain is like in frozen.
Are you in vacation mode?
I'm in taperhead mode right now.
Both just hit the cookie tray before this recording. I had 2 pieces of fudge.
You had 2 pieces of fudge.
I'm all fudged up right now.
And I'm hoping for a little sugar high now to get us started.
The carbs hit.
When those carbs hit, these hot or nots have no chance at all.
Absolutely.
Okay, so number 1, taking 0 time off after race season, hot or not.
So rolling directly from like fall races into, like full swing winter training, no break. I'm going to say not hot.
I'm going to say not hot too.
Yeah.
I don't even need, I'm just going to come out and say it.
Well, so what happens is that racing creates accumulated stress that doesn't always show up immediately. There's musculoskeletal fatigue that can lag behind cardiovascular recovery. Your hormonal systems also need time to recover. Cortisol, testosterone. Your thyroid needs time to reset. Your central nervous system fatigue is also invisible but extremely real. I don't know if you've ever tried to drive the day after a 100-mile race.
No, it should be illegal.
It should be illegal, honestly. I would rather drive that's illegal too. Not going to make this joke. Not going to make a drunk drive.
Don't say it.
I do remember driving home the day after Never Summer 100K this summer, and the whole time being like, if I get 1% more tired, I'm pulling over to nap.
Sometimes you just have to pull over to nap
I
and
was about
or
to pull over to nap,
maybe to throw up.
but I was also like white knuckling, just like, like I need to be home now. I'm so tired.
I think there's other things that athletes should think about and
Yeah.
why we want to take some time off, especially after that big A race and in between seasons. One, central nervous system fatigue. Again, like you mentioned, it's very hard to
Yeah.
operate machinery after, like, sometimes I think about like coaching after 100. I'm like, I always take a couple days off because my head is not, I can't formulate thoughts well
Yeah.
at all.
Yes.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Your adrenal system, your nervous system, glycogen stores and muscle protein synthesis need time for restoration and to take place. And when you skip that break, you can put yourself in a position where you might end up on a performance plateau
Yeah.
by mid-season into your next year. So you didn't fully recover, and so now you're starting training that is meant to provoke fatigue, but you're not coming at that from a place of like having a full cup.
Yeah.
You're kind of already draining that cup and there's not as much in there. So then you can't do as much before, and you're going to end up getting a setback. You're going to end up getting an injury. So higher injury risks are really prevalent. Mental and emotional burnout too. So like you need the psychological refresh that comes with taking some time off after
Yeah.
that big race. Your immune system is suppressed and compromised. And there's also kind of a gray zone trap where, again, we're not recovering, but we're not adapting to things. So we're not actually getting better. We're getting closer to that plateau, that place athletes don't want to be on, where they feel like they're really stagnating.
Yeah. So, I think that a lot of times folks get worried about losing fitness, especially if if there's between events, like if someone does, if they're doing multiple ultras in a season. But as we've talked about on previous episodes, you can cut volume in half for 4 to 6 weeks and only lose like 5 to 10% of fitness.
Right.
You detrain pretty slowly. You lose fitness much slower than the velocity at which you gained it. So, and a lot of times that 5 to 10% will actually return within 2 to 3 weeks of resumed training. So athletes who rest properly consistently outperform year-round grinders. I think that detraining fears are almost always overblown and pretty much exclusively come from a place of like vibes and feelings rather than actual physiology and science.
And that's the biggest problem, right? When we let our feelings control kind of our actions and the decisions that we make around our training. Yes, feelings are good, emotions are good. We're supposed to have them. Definitely feel what you must feel and express those things fully. But also try to create some space and step back to make sure that those things aren't driving you to make decisions that aren't
Yeah.
that are not going to help you in the long term, that don't
Mhm.
have your best long-term self in mind.
Yeah. All
So
right.
the verdict is not hot.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come out and
Yeah.
remind people, take a little time off after these races.
Yes. If you
Please.
feel like you need to take 4 months off or a month off of thinking not about running at all, that's probably a sign that you overdid it. I often see if an athlete is especially, this is one of the reasons where I really want people to take their time and not rush into signing up for the first ultra, the first 100K, the first 100 miler, especially 200 miler. If by the time you get to the finish line of your 100 or even a marathon, if the training it took to get you there makes you feel like you don't want to run for a full month, you overdid it. That goal was inappropriate, or the way that we chased it was
Right.
inappropriate.
Didn't maybe take enough rest in
Yeah.
that process. All right. Number 2 here, hot or not, doing a full season assessment.
Ooh, I love this. So what this is a systematic review of what worked and what didn't before you dive into planning next year. So taking the lessons from the good days and the growth days and using those to inform future behaviors and decisions.
So I like this because it matters in the fact that most training issues show up on race day, but originate months earlier.
Yep.
So if we don't have these periods for assessment, it's really hard to find our patterns and what we can actually meaningfully change to help you get better in the coming, month or the next training block, the next year, whatever is next. So patterns are only visible when you look across and view multiple races, multiple blocks of training, multiple seasons. And often like if we don't do some assessments, we're going to end up focusing energy on the wrong stuff, the stuff that doesn't actually get us better, that can be time consuming. Again, go back to an episode or two ago when we talked about our pyramid of training priorities. Like we can end up thinking that we need to be stuck in at the top of the pyramid, optimizing for 1% gains when really the issue all along was in our
Yeah.
foundation.
Do you need sodium bicarb or do you need to lift a damn weight? All right.
What
So
should we assess?
So
What
some
should we
things
assess?
I like athletes to think about at the end of their season is terrain. Where did you thrive? Where did you struggle? Did you struggle with technical stuff? Did you struggle with more runnable terrain? How did you feel about your climbing and your descending? Let's talk about how that showed up in training and how that came through in racing. Let's also look at volume tolerance. What was your tipping point? What volume level did you feel good at? And when did you go to from thriving to maybe going a little bit over the edge? Let's look at your intensity tolerance. Can you handle 2 hard sessions a week? Can you handle 1 hard session a week? What broke down first? Do you do well when we incorporate intensity into long runs? What if you only need 1 workout? I mean, many athletes only need 1 workout. Sometimes I'll add
Right.
in a second and then maybe some intensity in the long run, just depending on where the athlete's at, what their
What
goals are.
works? What can you handle? How
Yes.
about nutrition? What worked early but failed late? How
Right.
are your GI issues, hydration problems? Do you get the pukes
Because,
out there
yes,
like me?
exactly. Gear. Did you have issues with blisters? Did you have like lower leg issues that might be tied to inappropriate footwear, vest problems? Let's zoom out and look at all of the details and see if we can target those earlier in training and start testing gear, start testing nutrition earlier. So, what I like athletes to do is go back and review their training log for the 12 to 16 weeks before each race. I want them to identify patterns, what they felt like was a good week or a bad week, what might have been different, where did that coincide with life stress? Is it going to be the same life stress? Like if you're an accountant, let's not try to put your A race in April, if you're and see if you can identify 2 to 3 specific pain points that are worth addressing, like struggling to meet your recovery needs via nutrition, maybe needing some help figuring out some family logistics and childcare, how your racing schedule goes with your family schedule or your work schedule, things like that. The big thing here is to not try to fix everything at once. It is very hard, if not impossible, to be like, let's do a totally different overhaul, but instead let's spend some time focusing just on your recovery nutrition. Let's spend some time focusing just on dialing in your fueling plan, and then we can sort of whack-a-mole a lot of these problems until we're working our way up that pyramid of training hierarchies.
A couple insights here. Every time I exceed 10 hours with 2 hard workouts, I got sick. Okay, great. That's a good insight. How about technical descending killed me at every race? All right, maybe we need to work on our technical running and our downhill running in
Mhm.
the upcoming season. Gels worked until hour 4, then nothing stays down. All right, well, great insight. Let's think about making some fueling adjustments. Do we need to do some more solid fuels? How's our hydration plan? And then another one, I always started too fast when I felt good in my warm up.
Yeah.
So, hey,
I
slow
think
it down.
the little caveat I would put on this discussion is we want to identify patterns, but not pigeonhole ourselves with narratives. Because so often I'll see athletes be like, oh, I'm a low volume athlete. I can't do more than 40 miles a week. Well, your capacity is always changing. Sometimes you'll have less capacity and you should have more.
Year to
Otherwise,
year,
you
too.
aren't
It's
adapting.
not
So
always progressive.
what I never want athletes to say is like, if I do this, I'll get hurt or
Right.
I can't do this. I always want us to look honestly at the patterns and make sure we aren't formulating a self-undermining narrative that's just going to take away from what we might actually be able to do and staying curious and open. So identify patterns, but don't pigeonhole yourself.
All right. Maybe last one.
Yeah.
All right. Following the same plan that didn't work. Oh, we didn't give our verdict on that last one.
Hot.
I think if it wasn't obvious, doing that assessment is hot.
We
We
love
can
it.
learn a lot from that.
I did that with my coach. I did like a season post-mortem.
Nice.
I think that's one of the great benefits of being able to have like a one-on-one, like actual chat a viva voce with your coach. Huge
Yeah.
advocate for that. I guess if you are self-coached, you can take a good long look in the mirror. Have fun with that. All right. Number 3, following the same plan that didn't work last year. Classic.
So what is this? It's repeating the same training approach despite poor results.
I think it can be really hard, especially for folks who are self-coached, to implement some amount of change without implementing too much change, right?
Yeah.
Like we said, you can't reinvent the wheel completely, but if you're also not introducing some amount of novel stimulus or able to upgrade approaches that simply didn't work, then you're gonna get stuck. So, we see this a lot when it comes to like the definition of insanity, like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Because if you have the same inputs, you can expect the same outputs. If you get injured repeatedly, if you're getting sick repeatedly, something needs to change. Just, saying you're going to white knuckle, you're going to buckle down and you just need to execute better is almost never the answer. Usually it's so often like not, it's the knowing doing gap for athletes, which is why coaching as an industry exists. It's because like I'm not imparting a lot of information to people that they don't already know. People understand the exercise physiology. The job of the coach is how do we take the science and actually figure out how to implement that where the rubber meets the road of your life as an individual? Because like, sure, you can look at Jacob Ingebrigtsen's absolutely perfect optimized training plan, this like the scientifically perfect in a vacuum sort of plan, but that may not make sense if you're a busy mom of 3 with a job. So I think that it's really important that most often if someone is having a hard time connecting with their training, something's not resonating, they feel like they're not getting better, they're not recovering. A lot of times athletes will blame themselves when the problem isn't them. It's not their willpower. It's not their discipline. It's the plan isn't working.
Zellies real quick. Okay.
All right, some common patterns that we're going to probably want to address if our training plan didn't really work that well for us last year. Volume tipping point, for example, if 10 hours plus 2 hard sessions broke you, don't do it again. Go to 10 hours and 1 hard session. Switch up the stimulus. Intensity distribution is something we talk a lot about on this podcast. Maybe you need more easy days instead of more hard days. Maybe you do need 2 workouts a week if you're, a more advanced athlete. Long run approach is also really important to think about. So perhaps back-to-back runs instead of one really big, super long run, could be more effective, spreading out that volume.
Yeah.
And also your recovery allocation. Maybe you need more rest days, not fewer. Maybe the answer to doing higher volume is instead of running 7 days a week, you have to run 6. So it can be quite complex and there's a lot of nuance, but a couple of things maybe to help identify what to change is, look at 2 to 4 weeks, the 2 to 4 weeks of training that you did before things went wrong. What do they look like? What was different? What was successful? What was better about that block, that the blocks that went well versus the blocks that, failed? What does your injury history tell you? When do you typically get hurt? Like one thing that I noticed a pattern in myself was like fall is the time the last like 3 or 4 years where something has happened to me. I've gotten sick, I've gotten an injury, or I've gotten burnout. So like I discussed it with my coach and we we're like, this isn't the time to do my peak volume. Let's stay closer to my floor and make sure the quality is really high.
Yeah.
And so now I've gotten through most of this fall actually feeling better than last year. Made a slight change and that was really helpful.
And that's another big reason that like if you are not currently keeping a training log, what are you doing? Keep a training log. And you also,
Right.
This is going to blow your minds, you have to use the training log. Like even like, especially for athletes that I'm coaching, I need you to write feedback so that I can see what's going on and give you feedback accordingly. But you're also robbing future self important data points that you can make a decision from. Because if you look back on your training peaks and you see a week of like red workouts where you were non-compliant, how are you going to remember why you weren't compliant, right? Like work messed me up or kids were sick. Like make sure that you are leaving notes for yourself so that you are actually able to track patterns in your training and also so that your coach can do their dang job.
It really helps as a coach. It really helps when your athletes give you that information.
But they need to give themselves that information.
Well,
too.
right. For athletes too. And sometimes it can take a few seasons to like really recognize the pattern. Like my pattern previous to this was to white knuckle through it. I'll just grind it out. I'll just put my head down and keep doing it. And like, unfortunately, the result kept being the same. I would get
surprise,
injured or I would get sick. And so then, okay, let's actually make for a meaningful change that isn't necessarily a behavioral change on my part, i.e. be more mentally tough and white knuckle more.
Yeah.
Do a little bit less, rest a little bit more, a little less volume, etc. So a lot of that is experimental, and I do think an experimental mindset is really important with this. So walk us through that a little bit,
Yeah,
Zoe.
so your off season is basically a laboratory where it can be a low stakes testing ground. It's a good time to figure out what works and maybe what doesn't. You can try different approaches when it doesn't matter as much. You don't have a race bearing down on you. But again, remember to tweak one variable at a time as much as you can so you know what worked. Because, like, so often when people are trying to make a change in their training, they're like, I'm going to do everything different. I'm going to start taking ketones and bicarb and doing Pilates and sleeping only 20 minutes at a time and going low carb. And then we're
Oh
like,
yeah, throw it all at it.
what do
Kitchen
we,
sink.
yeah, exactly. Do not kitchen sink it. Change one variable at a time, document what you learned, keep a log, and freaking use it.
Yeah, if you're not using Training Peaks, guys, it's free. Like,
Yeah, use
just
Training Peaks.
upload in there and you can get so much data tracking that is not behind a paywall. It will change your life to have that. If you're still tracking in a notebook or an Excel sheet or your coach is doing that, fire them. Get rid of them. Get somebody who wants to actually use the apps that are available that help streamline this and allow you to more easily see those patterns. If you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, so the off season exists to make changes, not repeat mistakes.
Okay, what's the verdict here?
I'm going to say hot.
Not hot.
Not hot.
Not hot.
Following the same plan. Sorry, I forgot. We talked about so many things. I don't even know who I am.
Who are you?
I have no idea. All
Let's
right,
repeat the same mistakes.
let's repeat the same mistakes. So
right.
we want to talk about 5 myths about the off season or transition season. These are the mistakes that we see athletes make time and time again, sometimes with coaches, sometimes without coaches, but especially for athletes tuning in who are self-coached. These are 5 things, or I mean, really for everyone. These are 5 things, mistakes to avoid, or myths that we want to debunk. Number 1, this is the one I see maybe the most often, is taking time off will destroy my fitness, because people believe that any break will mean massive fitness loss. And like, I say this one because, like, I struggle with it too. Like, I do not like taking time off. I'm always working on it.
It's
Shout
tough.
out to my therapist. But you, like, physiologically, you cannot lose fitness like very quickly. Like, it takes like 2 weeks of total rest to really start deep training. So you don't need to maintain the exact same volume year round. Or like, I think other beliefs that I see that are detrimental are that rest is for people that aren't serious, or I can't take any downtime or all my hard work would be lost. No, no, no.
Well, and those myths right there, those really common beliefs lead athletes to make a lot of really poor
And
decisions
these are
around their training.
beliefs that I think, like, I would really encourage athletes to like journal around their relationship to movement and exercise if it's something they struggle with, because this is something that, like, a lot of people may not say out loud. They maybe wouldn't say, I don't feel good taking time off, but like, similar to me, but I know that those sort of deep down beliefs were guiding more of my decision making than I was comfortable, which is why therapy exists.
So some reality checks here that can be helpful when we're talking about these common beliefs and this one myth around taking time off and it's going to destroy my fitness. I'm never going to be the same athlete I was. And all that craziness there.
Different man, different river.
Yeah. So fitness is much more durable than you think. And Zoe already mentioned a little bit about this, so I won't repeat it. But also strategic rest creates space for growth. We often see athletes who get injured and have to take a couple weeks off come back stronger
Yes.
because they had time for a deeper rest that they really needed and they weren't getting until their body just told them, hey, you know
We
what?
gotta stop.
Now we're taking some
Yeah.
rest. Year-round training often does lead to plateaus and not progress, which is why we really have to be smart about how we set up our seasons. And we do take a transition season. We do take time off after our races to get that reset all the way down to a cellular level. And it's not just about the physiological side or the hormonal side. It's about the mental and emotional side too. And so like, I like to athletes to think about like the break is where, next season's gains are built.
Yeah.
So you take this break so you can go big and next time, and you can really push yourself harder.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit again about the science, because I think that can help combat some of the people's deeply held beliefs.
Get into those facts.
So for VO2 max, that can decline only 7% after 3 weeks of no training. That's pretty wild, right? Like,
Right.
compared to how it emotionally feels to take 3 weeks off training. But it'll return to baseline within 2 to 3 weeks of resumed training. Boom. That's not a ton of time. That comes back really quickly. Mitochondrial density is largely preserved exactly as is for 4 to 6 weeks. You're not losing, your mitochondria. If you take a day off, the composition of your cells isn't changing radically. Um, Neural pathways remain intact. That's one of the things that'll feel a little sloppy, even if you take like sometimes athletes can even feel a little sensitive to it. Like after a single rest day, they might feel, which is like why it's helpful to do some strides or surges before a workout. So it's one of the easiest things to get back. So that's not something we're extremely worried about. Aerobic base is sort of the slowest energy system to build, but it's also the slowest to lose. So when you weigh that with what skipping the break actually costs, the risks far outweigh the benefits. Accumulated fatigue carries into the next season. You're not getting that hard restart and you're not creating the foundation that you can continue to build on. You're sort of just digging a hole deeper and deeper. You have a higher injury risk when you ramp up and lower capacity to adapt. You also can have mental staleness that affects motivation. I think being tuned into your motivation and your get up and go is a really important metric, or like more subjective metric to stay tuned to, and that I encourage athletes to talk about freely in their training logs, either one-on-one or with their coach.
I
Um,
think athletes who tend to perform well year over year and continue to see and be able to identify tangible improvements do so because they take intentional breaks. They're good at really just taking the energy down when they take those breaks. So they also get a mental refresh too, so that their motivation returns, their desire to do hard things and to dig deep returns. And they don't carry a fatigue debt into new seasons or even into one A race into another, because they're very intentional with that time off. And I think it's something that a lot of athletes can improve on. Even if you think you're really good at this, ask yourself after a race, when you have more space in your schedule and you're not training as much, what do you do with that space? Ask yourself that. Take a personal inventory, because it's easy to fill that space with other things. And sometimes that stuff is rather taxing and we're not actually getting the recovery that we need.
yeah.
So rest creates the space for adaptation. And a key point here before we move on to myth number 2 is rest isn't the opposite of training. It is training.
Yes.
It is the most key part of your training. You can only train as hard as you rest.
True.
So fitness loss is temporary. Burnout and injury, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
So we have to respect this part of the process.
Everything functions in trade-offs. Everything is risk-benefit analysis. Myth number 2.
Yes,
The
give it to
off
us.
season should be unstructured. I love this one. I think
Woo!
this is another one we see a lot of, because so often we see people who believe the off season means no plan at all. We're just vibing. Or they
Vibes.
think that structure is only for race prep. And it's either training for them lives in this dichotomy of you're either preparing for a race or you're doing jack shit.
There's somebody that never reached their potential.
That's hard. That's a tough way to live.
Sorry.
You should only run when you're feeling like it, or that planning and structure intensity somehow kills the fun of running. If that
Yeah.
feels like a dichotomy that you're buying into, that is a choice. That's a decision you're making.
Oh, there's a hot take.
It is.
All right,
We
so
decide what's fun. Nothing is innately fun. If you've decided that having structured training, if you've decided to believe that's not fun, that is a choice you're making, and it's going to limit your training forever. Have fun with that. See you at the finish line.
we could update those beliefs. Get at me for a deep dive call. Okay. I love the reality checks here in this outline. So let's get into some of these. One, some structure prevents drifting into nothing.
Yes.
If you don't have some structure in your training, good luck getting better. If you're a newer athlete and you're kind of going to your local track Tuesdays and you're doing speed work and it's not periodized, but it's once a week, for a couple seasons, you'll probably see some growth because you're a newer athlete and you can do pretty
You
much
can
anything.
do literally anything.
And you're going to get better if you're consistent. But if you're an intermediate or an advanced athlete, if you're an elite athlete and you're not following a structured training plan, especially your workouts, you're going to find yourself on the plateau, and it's going to be really hard to get off of that plateau. So strong reality check there. Periodized training is really, really important. Randomized interval construction and randomized periodization, which I guess technically wouldn't even be periodization if it's randomized, but you will see significantly worse results and less fitness gains. And that's backed up by the research.
Yeah. So, I think I want athletes to think of structure as a spectrum rather than a binary.
Okay, explain that a
Yeah.
little bit.
So race prep is sort of a season with more structure. We're going to have more specific workouts, more precise volume. The off season or transition season, we're going to have low structure, but not no structure. So we might have different frequency or intensity goals, more flexible duration, more invitation to tune into subbing and cross training on recovery days or on some endurance days. Less, time like hammering the long run. If we're not training for a longer race, you might be able to sub in different aerobic base building activities. But what we're trying to avoid is a complete break with no structure, and just doing whatever feels good in the moment. There can be times where we want to intentionally, for again, asserted and finite amount of time, lean into even less structure. Someone is, if there's a certain chapter in someone's life where they might need a little more agency or they
It
might need to
happens.
lean into that flexibility, that's okay. We always want to put an expiration date on that because that's where things start to get a little bit slippery. And that's where we need to have really sometimes honest chats about expectations and training. But again, it's a spectrum and it should look different at different parts of the year. But you can't be both training to compete at Western States and then skiing whenever the heck you want, right? Like we need goals demand some amount of structure, but if training feels way overly structured, then we need to have a chat about where does this start to feel not fun? What can maybe invite more motivation or put a little more agency in your court so that you feel like you have a little more discretion over what you're doing in training.
So a little structure to help our self-coached athletes out there to think about this is you could set like a frequency goal for your transition season. I'm going to run 4 times a week, but maybe it's not the same 4 days as when you're training for your A race. And that's okay, but you're going to get out there and you're committed to 4 days a week. There could also be a terrain, goal. I'm going to run one run on technical trails, or I'm really tired of slogging up these like long hills. So I'm only going to do a run with steep hills once a week. Strength goals could be part of this too. Like, all right, I'm committed to 2 strength sessions a week. But like I'm going to get them in when it feels right to me, but I am going to get 2. There could also be intensity goals. Like, I'm only going to do 1 hard workout per week, or, I'm going to do, 1 hard workout, but it's going to be at 75% of my normal capacity. So that way I don't have to go to the mental well to finish up these workouts because I want to build mental bandwidth during this time. So I think another thing sometimes I do with athletes in off-season structure is I have a friction structure. Like I'm going to go up into the point where I'm going to run 6 days a week and I will go up into the point where I feel friction and then I will stop. And so like we don't use mental bandwidth to try to like muscle our way through to get all 90 minutes of a run in, for example. And we can start to like reassociate with the run being fun and positive rather than associated with being like, I got to muscle my way through this to meet this obligation that I have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways that you can be creative with this while maintaining some structure and your consistency and inviting in space for, that real deload that needs to happen in these
Yeah.
periods.
So I think the key point here is that structure and flexibility aren't opposites. Light structure can prevent drift while preserving the mental break. So let's think of things as a spectrum and not a binary.
Yeah. Key point.
That was it. That was the key point.
Love it. Love it.
Myth number 3. I should fix all of my weaknesses all at once.
Oh God.
I love that you they're just
Woo!
punchlines.
Sometimes I like to get a good laugh in at our outline, but yeah, it's true. And how often do you go through that assessment with an athlete and you see like 3 or 4 things that, that you want to work on. For example, you're going through I like doing a review of the pyramid of training priorities and have athletes self-assess 1 to 10 where they are with
Hmm.
level 1, 2, and 3. So like, for example, refresher, level 1, foundation of everything, consistent training, sleep, and basic nutrition. Where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? And then, they'll commonly individualize each. Well, consistency, I'm at a 5. I get 50% of the runs in a week that I'm assigned.
Yeah.
Sleep, I'm really good. I got 8 hours a night. That's a 10. Nutrition, I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag. It's a 6. Okay, well, now I have 2 things for sure I want to work on, but what's the most important thing there? An athlete typically will want to work on both of those things, but it might be more effective to focus on
Or
one.
to even think about like, well, does one of these live downstream from the other? Because
Exactly.
so often I'll be like, okay, why aren't you getting more runs done? Are you feeling tired? Ooh, is that maybe because of the nutrition? Or do you feel like you don't have a plan, like you're not doing meal planning, you're not being strategic with your nutrition, and that's not setting you up for success in the workouts, things like that.
Right. And I
Because a
think
lot of times there can sort of be a domino effect.
there's a domino effect, and also therein lies some of the beliefs that people have. So it's off season. I have time to address both of these things. Or we've identified multiple problems, and so therefore I should work on multiple things that exist there. I need to overhaul everything.
Love this. Definitely, like, this is so, especially with like people who are newer working with a coach for the first time, they're like, awesome. I want to do all of my speed work different. I want to change my shoes. I want to change, I'm getting bangs. I'm going to go vegan, and I'm going to start doing Olympic lifts for the first time. And that's not going to work very well.
It's very challenging to change everything, and also really hard for you or your coach to figure out what in there helped work. If you do start to improve, we don't have one thing we can't find that signal.
Especially if like this time of year with like all the new year, new you bullshit, resist that impulse to be like, I need to start doing a bullet journal, and I need to go vegan, and I need to start meditating and getting 10 hours of sleep a night and volunteering at my local soup kitchen. Let's pick one thing and actually fix it. And
Yeah,
if you truly
and nail
fix
it.
it and we see progress and you nail it, then we'll move on to the next thing. But just like expecting to wake up January 1 and fundamentally be a different person with like more willpower or discipline or structure than you've ever been able to call on before ain't gonna happen. Because the reality
Yeah, tell
is
us
that
about the
when you
reality,
try to
please.
fix everything, what you end up doing is fixing nothing.
Right.
So maybe focus on 2 to 3 pain
I
points
think
maximum.
it's 3 max.
3 max,
3
2
max.
more ideal. Sustainable change requires patience, and incremental improvement beats ambitious failure. That's why it's important to set, like actual, like the SMART goals. We have a podcast maybe from like a year and a half ago at this point
Smart.
about the psychology of goal setting that I would encourage folks to listen to, because so often we see athletes fall into the overwhelm trap where a long list of problems just results in paralysis, and too many changes. Even if something does work, we may not know what it is and know what to keep focusing on. Following everything all the time is unsustainable. That's not how we create changes that stick and changes that last. Feeling behind, also feeling like, oh my God, I know I should sleep better. I know I should eat better. I know I should lift better. I know I should be volunteering. I know I should be learning Spanish. That's just going to make you feel constantly behind. And that's going to ruin your mental game by creating anxiety that defeats the purpose and takes a lot of joy out of the process as well.
And it makes it very hard also for you to figure out where am I actually seeing meaningful progress? Where am I winning? It turns my reality into a state of constant lack. Everything is missing. Everything needs to be improved on. I'm not sufficient how I am right now, which is not the optimal state of being if you're actually trying to get better at something. We want to really be able to identify the wins and to see that we are improving, even if it's in very small and sometimes hard to perceive ways, because that gives us the motivation and it helps us really feel like we actually can get better and we are in control of these situations. So if we're overwhelmed by how many things we need to fix, then, like you said, we just feel very overwhelmed and we have a really hard time focusing in on what's working and where we're actually making progress, which is why it's super, super important to just start with prioritizing just a couple things.
Yeah. So, some questions I would ask when you're thinking about what to prioritize: what caused the biggest problems on race day? What were the big pain points? What issues showed up repeatedly? Where was the pattern? What is the most addressable in the off season specifically? That may not be like that, might be a great time to address durability or to address diet, but that may not be when we're able to specifically, fix race day mindset things. That might be something we focus on more in the race season. And what would have the highest impact if solved? Again, trying to finesse your, like salt intake during races isn't going to have the same impact as like, am I able to get out the door? Am I wearing a pair of shoes that works for me?
Right.
Really basic
Is
stuff.
my training consistent?
Yeah. Where
Do
are we
I
going to
eat
have
sufficiently every single day?
the biggest ROI? 3 meals a day. That's a big one. If you're not
Focus.
eating 3 meals a day, fix that right now.
I mean, I think it's so important to just identify that biggest impact, that highest priority. What is the biggest percentage?
Yeah.
You can answer that question, you're going to be setting yourself up for really big breakthroughs.
Yeah. So pick 2 to 3 things, address them with curiosity, patience, and persistence. Save the rest for next year.
All right, myth number 4, consistency means training every day.
No, so often we see people that believe that consistency means no days off and that missing a day breaks the streak. And somehow they're like wholly dependent on that inertia to get the training done. And then they'll miss one day, and one day becomes 2 days, becomes 3 days, becomes 12 weeks. More days accumulated is consistency. Rest days, we want those to be consistent as well. So the reality is that consistency is a sustainable pattern of training over time. And rest days must be a part of that pattern because quality of training matters more than quantity of days. And sustainable will always be maximal or even optimal in a perfect world, right?
So consistency matters because showing up for planned sessions regularly results in better outcomes. And maintaining frequency week over week creates better outcomes. We've talked about all the downstream effects of this, from improvements in VO2 max, lactate threshold, overall fitness, neuromuscular adaptations, and better running economy and efficiency. Everything streams from downstream of frequency and consistency. Getting out there week over week is consistency. If we have big multi-week gaps, that's not consistent training. Following a pattern that works for your life can help you become more consistent. Hiring a coach who can help you organize your training around the things that are going on in your life can help you become more consistent. Often we carry these beliefs that I can't be consistent because of blank. Because of blank, my training is inconsistent. Work on whatever is in that blank for you and consider whether that thing is a self-limiting belief or it's actually a reality. It's actually a constraint, and commit to working in creative ways that allow you to be consistent despite some of those constraints.
Here are the things that I see often kill athletes' consistency. Like the biggest mistakes I see athletes make are plans that don't fit their life. And so often, like, especially people will feel pressure, like, I'm paying this coach. If they give me a plan, I have to execute it or I have failed. No, we're co-pilots. It's our job to co-create a plan that actually makes sense for your life. If something isn't fitting, it's not your job to white knuckle it until it does, or to throw your hands up if it doesn't fit and just give up. It's our job to co-create something that makes sense together. Often I see athletes fall into this all or nothing thinking. Well, I missed one day, so the rest of the week, out the door. Think of training days as independent events. Whatever happened yesterday does not necessarily have to impact this day. If you missed yesterday, great. Today's a whole new day to get back on the wagon.
Love
The
that.
best day to begin was yesterday. Also, ignoring recovery needs until you are forced to rest. Not good. So often it's these people who like no pain, no gain, no days off. They try to just accumulate low quality training until they hit a wall. Also, comparing your schedule to others. There are some people out there who are genetic freaks. They are able to do different and better, or not better, different than other folks. Like
Yeah.
some folks might be able to stack different volumes of training or have different race season composition. That's not better. They just have a more, their specific physiology and life circumstances might be better adapted to that. The best way you can undermine your training is comparing yourself to someone who has a different life and a different body. So don't do that.
Oh God, we all do it. That's was why I'm over here laughing,
Yeah,
because
just
I
because you
was just
saw
doing that yesterday.
Joe on Instagram, ran a 100 and he's already back to competing 10 days later. Great. Awesome for him. Sad for his endocrine system. We're not going to do that just because Joe does it.
Every day I write in my journal, I am not Jim Walmsley. I am not Jim Walmsley.
Same. I'm not Courtney DeWalter. I have not been able to manifest it.
So let's build some consistency in 2026, right? Why not?
Yeah. So,
How do we do that?
what we want to avoid is having a heroic January, burnout by March, and having to start over in June. So
Aw.
I think the core message here is that consistency is a sustainable pattern, not a streak. Rest is an essential part of that pattern.
Love that. All right. Myth number 5, because there's only 5.
Like all things, there's 5.
The off season doesn't matter for race performance. Ooh, this is a real myth. So let me get into the beliefs here. Real training starts 16 to 20 weeks before a race. Okay, that's an interesting belief. Off season is just time for maintenance.
Or that's when I decide to become a gravel bike rider.
Yes.
I'm, for those only listening to the audio
Please.
version, I'm doing a heroic eye roll.
Never gravel ride, Zoe.
You're allowed to gravel ride, but you can't just again, the thing where you sign up for this 50K because your buddy's doing it, but you actually don't like doing long runs. So that by the time you complete the training block, you hate your life, you hate your coach, you hate running, you feel like you need to sign up for Unbound Gravel because that's where all middle-aged ambition goes to die.
Here's another belief that you might find interesting. You can always make up your fitness later.
Not how anything works.
And another one is spring is when improvement happens.
Also, again, this is classic Colorado syndrome of people just want to ski all winter and then sign up for 50Ks in Moab. And no, your bones don't like that.
Yeah, right? Gosh, I've got patellar tendonitis just thinking about that.
The reality is you are always training for everything. That's the Zen cone of I'm already training for Western states. Am I in Western states? Absolutely not. Will I get in the next 10 years? IDK, but I'm already training.
You're already training.
You're always already training. Fall off-season training is training for your next summer races. Consistency compounds. Having a higher baseline in January means a higher peak in July. You're earning bigger days down the road by having smaller days now.
Right.
Problems that you identify and solve now are going to be less likely to derail your spring training. And you can't make up accumulated training time. So often people will get in this cycle of they'll train too much, so they'll either get burned out or hurt. They'll have to take 6 weeks off, and then they sign up for another race because they feel left out or have FOMO or have an ultra sign up credit or whatever. Then they sign up, they hit register, and then, oh my God, I'm panic training. Don't do that.
So a couple principles here. Where you start a training block determines where you finish. And it's true. If you start your training block 8 weeks before your race, you're going to be chasing cutoffs out
That's an
there.
expensive taper.
Even, even if you're just running a 10K or a marathon, likely is insufficient. January baseline of 6 hours a week could mean a peak of 12 hours a week in July. That's great for 100 milers or athletes running 100K and those really long ultras. A January baseline of 3 hours a week could mean a peak of 9 hours in July, which might be nice for our athletes who are doing 50Ks and maybe even some of our 50 milers. So putting in that time does add up. Same build, but we're creating new ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
The higher our floor is, the less there is a gap between where your floor and your ceiling is, which then allows you to do a little bit more and push that ceiling higher, safer.
Yeah. So what we're aiming for here is year over year improvement. This is ideally, I work on average with my athletes for 2 to 3 years. not 12 weeks, not 6 months, 2 to 3 years is the average duration of tenure of my athletes
That's
that I
great.
work
That's
with.
nice.
And that is because we need to accumulate training across years, not months, to reach the kind of ambitious goals that my athletes like to work towards. And those may not always be race goals. Those may be goals of like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids, or I want to be able
Sure.
to cycle the Tour Divide, or I want to be able to ski uphill in my 70s. Like, it's not just about like, being fast in your 30s or whatever. Most meaningful life goals of like a healthy connection to movement, a healthy connection to exercise, feeling at home and excited in your body, those things take more than 12 weeks. Each off season builds on the previous year, so it's sort of this thing of like the best way to get ready is to stay ready. And skipped off seasons are a missed compounding opportunity. So the runners who improve the most at 40, 50, 60 never stopped building. They rested, they stayed consistent, they listened to their bodies, they didn't like white knuckle and not take days off, but they just stayed in the game longer and smarter than the majority of athletes. That's why I love coaching masters athletes.
I know, it's so
They're
fun.
smart,
You're right, and they see the bigger
see
picture,
the bigger picture.
which comes with time and wisdom. So, I guess a key point here is the off season isn't separate from race preparation. It all works together. It's all cumulative. The off season really is a big part of our foundation, and it determines, what our peaks look like later in the year.
Yeah. So, I think that to sort of wrap things up, time off will not destroy your fitness. Some structure is good. Frequency goals can provide flexibility with accountability, and don't try to fix everything at once. Pick 2 to 3 pain points, address them with patience and specificity and intention, not just vibes in a bullet journal. Consistency isn't just daily training, it's a sustainable pattern that includes intentional and productive rest. Your off season or transition season or whatever the heck you want to call it matters enormously, because your January, what you do starting tomorrow, is going to determine what every day of your July looks like. If you want to run a 100 miles, if you want to run up a mountain, if you want to finish your first 5K marathon, pick up your grandkids, whatever it is, you are committing or failing to commit to that goal right now, today.
So before we close this out, I want to get into just a couple mindset shifts and some action items for folks. Remember, rest is part of training. If you have not adopted that singular belief yet, make it a core belief in 2026. Write it down in a journal every single day. Put it on a sticky note on the mirror in your bathroom where you brush your teeth. Embody that one idea, because it is so fundamental. If you can rewire your thinking around rest, it'll help you to adapt better to your training and accumulate more training over time.
Yeah.
Another key mindset shift is off season is when next season starts. So let's get going. Consistency compounds over years, not weeks. Simpler plans are more likely to be followed. So don't overcomplicate things. Don't try to fix too many things at once. 2 to 3 things max. And accountability beats motivation. So set yourself up for success. Easier plans are easier to follow. They're easier to get done. You will be more consistent.
If you're having trouble executing on your training plan, the problem likely isn't you or your lack of motivation or whatever, bullshit hustle culture has taught you to believe. There's likely a solution that exists outside of you. Something can be simpler. There's a tweak. We can work smarter, not harder. And this is where I would really, again, like urge people to recruit more people to your support team. Maybe that's a coach. Maybe that's a mental performance coach, registered dietitian, nutritionist. If something isn't working, like resolve to fix it and resolve to not just try to white knuckle your way through it all on your own. Recruit help to your team, because like if your goals matter to you enough that you're listening to us blather on for over an hour, then you deserve people in your corner who care at least as much as we do.
Absolutely. A couple action items. Take a break at the end of the season when you finish that last A race. Doesn't have to be long. Can just be 2 to 4 weeks. You can have some running in there if you want, but take the time. If you feel like you need it, take the time. No, you will not detrain. Do a full assessment of your training to understand your weaknesses from the previous season, the things that worked and didn't. Identify 2 to 3 pain points to address. Set your frequency goals for your transition season so you understand and you can get out there consistently and you can keep up the frequency of your runs and not be set back when spring rolls around. Build at least one accountability system in your life, whatever it is. Training Peaks is mine. I think that works really, really well.
And
Schedule.
paying a coach like $300
Right, the $350 that I pay my coach every month.
tax deductible.
Tax deduction. Thankfully. Still got to have the cash in the bank, though. Schedule monthly low-key events to stay engaged. I love this for athletes. This keeps you focused, keeps you moving and looking into the future and directing your training at certain anchor points. All right, Zoe, hit us with that final thought.
Yeah. So I think the final sort of thing I would want to leave athletes with is the runners who keep improving year after year aren't the ones who train hardest in December. They're the ones who train smartest. They're ones who take breaks, solve problems 1 or 2 at a time, build sustainable consistency that actually serves their goals and meets them where they are, not an imaginary fake life where they have a masseur and a live-in chef and childcare 24/7.
Right.
They create systems that don't rely on motivation. If you're still relying on motivation to get shit done, fascinating. That's a choice. Your next season starts now, today, yesterday. But it starts with rest, reflection, and intention. The spring version of you, just like picture yourself having that peak experience in July. You're finishing a race, or you're on a runcation and you're having fun and you're beating your husband up the mountain, for example.
You're beating your husband.
Those things that really matter to all of us. Picture what you want to achieve in July. Commit to that now. Commit to the changes that requires now. And the summer and spring version will thank the version of you tonight for, maybe turning TV off, going to bed early, logging into your Training Peaks and leaving a note for your coach, for resting, for eating enough and doing this training thing right.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll see you in the new year. And as always, reach out to us. We'd love topics for the coming year's podcast episodes, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, and check us out on the web, microcosm-coaching.com.